In this video, I'm going to make 4 industrial or futuristic bases that could also be used as minimalist scatter terrain or objective markers from cheap materials. I'm going to use these 32mm bases, but you could scale up or down for different sizes. I'm making 4 bases, and the first 3 all start the same way. I take a piece of food packaging cardboard bigger than the base and superglue it on. Then, when set, I carefully cut around the base to remove the excess cardboard. For the first base, I take the same cardboard. I cut 2 pieces to take up roughly half the base with a slight gap between them, as if they're floor panels. These are stuck down with wood glue. You can use super glue again, but I prefer the extra working time of wood glue. When set, the excess cardboard is removed again in the same way. I have this packaging tape with an interesting industrial looking texture. Using superglue, I fix it to the base on the other side to the 2 panels. Once set, I again trim off the excess. These are the bits of plastic I removed from paper clips in the industrial greebles video, which I kept for potential use, such as now. I glue 2 pieces onto the base with superglue as if they're pipes. One hides the join between the cardboard and packaging tape, the other is bent slightly away. I glue 2 3mm hole punch pieces of cardboard to the 2 panels with wood glue, as if they're large bolts or rivets. Next, I cut off the excess plastic from the pipes. The base is now ready for the next step. With the second base, I'm using one of these small cylindrical electronic components that I got from the Freeview recorder. I get one of these 8mm hole punch pieces of cardboard. Using some of the food packaging cardboard, I measure a piece big enough that the 8mm disc will fit on it, cut a bigger piece and stick it down with wood glue as before. Again, I trim off the excess. I then cut off a piece of this textured food packaging and superglue it down to cover the rest of the base. And trim off that excess as well. I then glue the 8mm disc onto the cardboard side near one end with wood glue. I clean up the electronic component and superglue it onto the disc. Using the plastic covering from the paper clips again, I superglue 2 pieces leading to the component as if they're conduits. And again trim off the excess. This base is now ready for the next stage. For the third base, I'm using the packaging strip again. I cut off a piece that's slightly larger than the base and cut it in half vertically. I superglue one strip down a bit in from the edge, and after it's set, I trim off the excess as usual. Next I use the cardboard again, checking it's square, and cut a thin strip. I cut one piece off and stick it down with wood glue roughly in the middle next to the packaging tape. I then cut 2 more pieces and add them above and below the first, leaving a slight gap. I superglue down the other piece of packaging tape next to the cardboard. Then add a single piece of cardboard next to the shorter piece of tape. And 2 pieces next to the larger, again with a slight gap between them. Once those were all set, I trimmed them down as before off screen. I now glue these 1mm hole punch pieces of cardboard to the corner of each piece of card to represent rivets. And this is now ready for the next step. The fourth base is constructed a bit differently. First, I punch out a piece of cardboard using this flower hole punch. This, as in the Industrial Greebles video, will be a fan. I paint this with a 50/50 black paint Mod Podge mix to strengthen it, giving 2 coats if needed. Next I paint it grey, which takes more than 1 coat. Finally, I highlight the edges with silver. Once dry, I superglue it to the base in about the middle. Using the hole puncher that's just bigger than the fan, I cut 2 half circles and superglue them to the base around the fan, again cutting off the excess off camera. Next I use some of this anti-rodent mesh I first used in the Gabions video and cut a piece just large enough to cover the fan and be glued down. This is then stuck down with superglue. I then make a template the size of the mesh. This would have been easier before the mesh was stuck down. I draw this on cardboard, cut the cardboard in half and cut out the tracing. This is then stuck down with wood glue and the excess removed again off camera. I then punch out 2 more half circles, like with the first layer, and stick these down with wood glue, making sure there's a visible join. I again cut off the excess off camera. Finally, I add 4 3mm hole punch pieces of cardboard at the joins to look like rivets again. This last base is now ready for the next step. With all 4 bases finished, I'm going to give them a coat of the 50/50 Mod Podge black paint mix. Many of the following paints require more than 1 coat. I then paint panels on some of the bases blue. And this small panel grey. Then paint these pipes and the electronic component white, because the next colour will cover better afterwards. Those parts I painted white, I now paint red. Next I use Folk Art gunmetal grey metallic to paint the rivets and the 2 parallel conduits. I touch up the various areas where I've gone over the edges with the painting. The packaging tape and food packaging plastic I give a heavy dry brush with the gunmetal. Then all the bases are painted with homemade blackwash. Then the packaging tape and food packaging are given a lighter dry brush with silver. I then catch some of the edges with the silver, and finally use a torn off piece of sponge to dab the silver in various places. Now I'm adding PVA to the bases in various places, which will then be covered in baking soda. This will represent rust. Once that's set, I brush off the excess with a soft makeup brush. Then drip some of this PVA that's been heavily diluted with water on it to help lock it in place. Next I use a torn off piece of sponge to dab the baking soda and around it with burnt umber. Then do something similar with burnt sienna, but lighter and with less coverage. And finally dab on some orange with a small brush, removing most of it with my finger. The electronic component that I painted red, I then paint with gloss varnish. The idea is to make it look like a bulb, though I'm not the best painter for this. Finally, I paint the edges of the base as black. The bases are now all complete. I'll later give them a couple of coats of matte varnish for protection. Want to help support the channel? Then please like, comment, subscribe, share, join our Patreon, or buying through the Amazon or drive-thru links below helps support the channel at no cost to you.